Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa Miller.
And I'm Nazar Yassin.
Welcome to Soul Searching, where we hear the deeper spiritual journey of some of the world's most impactful people. We hope their stories might inspire a more authentic, spiritual, purposeful life of your own.
I don't know what the hell all that was, but something was happening. He's a professional dater, they told me. And I did not take that as an insult. I just said, guys, this is going to be the hardest day of our lives, and we need to lock arms and just go do this.
A profound, moving conversation with Alisyn Camerota. Alisyn's so well known as a co-anchor, CNN, Fox, outstanding journalist. She spoke from such a deep and tender, heartfelt place.
Yeah, it was amazing for her to be just so visceral and authentic and real about this horrible, traumatic thing that comes to pass in many people's lives, which is losing a spouse, a longtime spouse, the love of your life. And her ability to deal with that gracefully and to also see some of the sunshine that breaks through the clouds in a situation like that, where you can be grateful for the time that you're able to spend together. You can allow the loss of somebody and allow death to be a little bit of a teacher to you about how you should live your own life.
And that she's still in relationship with Tim.
Yeah, it's a beautiful...
With the signs, the guidance.
Yeah, a beautiful spiritual love story, really, is what they had together.
And she brought along her kids.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful discussion.
Absolutely.
So grateful we can share this.
Looking forward to sharing it with y'all.
Welcome to Soul Searching, where we look into the deep, authentic spiritual path. You will recognize our beautiful guest, Alisyn Camerota, from her years as co-anchor at CNN, and before that, Fox. Everybody loved Alisyn, both sides of the aisle. Today, she's here in a very deep and profound way. We're talking about your recent journey.
Thank you. Great to be with you guys.
So excited to have you.
I've been really looking forward to it.
So, shall we start where the rubber hits the road?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You have very generously, very graciously brought us and others into what's really the most profound and painful part of all of our lives, which is the crossing over of our spouse. Right? And I know that you and Tim Lewis were very in love for many, many years. And every time I saw Tim Lewis, the first thing he talked about was Alisyn. Mm-hmm. So yours is a love story, and is it fair to say that love story continues?
Well, thank you for recognizing that, Lisa, and it makes me feel really proud to have been a part of that and to have been Tim's partner. Like, that was a very special and privileged position, you know, to have been chosen by Tim and to have built this life with Tim. And so I feel very lucky that I got to be a part of that love story. You know, I don't think that that's a guarantee. And I think that, you know, it was just, I always felt honored to be on Tim's arm and to be with him. And that's what I had always hoped for in life and wished for. So I'm so grateful that I got it. In terms of it still continuing, I mean, obviously it's in a different form. Tim passed away in July. I'm still figuring, I mean, I don't know if I ever will figure out what form it is now. I feel Tim's presence every day. As my son and I, my son's 18, this is his last year at home, as we talk about, we feel Tim's presence. It would be better to have his physical presence. It's not as great. It's different. So it's not nothing, but we miss the physical presence of, you know, Tim being able to laugh at our jokes, me being able to go on dates with Tim. But I definitely, there's not a day that goes by that I don't feel his presence in a very real way and hear his voice. And it's not a literal hearing of his voice. It's that I know him so well. And Tim allowed himself to be so known. I talked about this at his memorial. You know, he wasn't an enigma. He wasn't a secretive person. What you saw was what you got. And so I know him so well that I can know for virtually everything what he would say. in that moment. And I'm grateful for that.
So at the funeral, you made a very beautiful, profound point that Tim was 58, and he lived full out for 58 years.
Where is it written that we get 80 years?
Mm-hmm.
Where is that a guarantee? And so everyone I've confronted feels like it's such a tragedy that Tim died. It's such a tragedy that at 58 he died, and that, I've had friends say it's so unfair. And I just have to reframe that, because I don't feel that Tim and I were unlucky. I do feel that we were able to achieve every dream we'd ever had. So we had 3 healthy, beautiful kids. We achieved incredible career success. We achieved a loving, really attached marriage and committed marriage. We traveled. We had peaks. In other words, I don't want to that to be kind of lessened by saying that, he was robbed of these next, 27 years.
So for those who are just getting to know you and Tim, would you consider sharing just a bit of the night you met and maybe some beautiful moments, and then perhaps move into the final couple years? Yeah.
So I had heard about Tim Lewis for years before I had met him, because of his friends who went to college with him, and you're one of them. So from time to time, what they would say is, we should really introduce you to Tim Lewis. He's just like you. He's a professional dater, they told me. And I did not take that as an insult, because I was the single girl in book group. So the other women were living with their boyfriends. They were getting married. One of them was having a baby. They were engaged. And I was the girl who once a month would go to book group, and they'd be like, how was your weekend? Tell us everything. They would vicariously live through my dating stories. And so there came a time that I broke up with yet another boyfriend, and I said to the women in book group, is it time for me to meet Tim Lewis? Timmy Lou. And they were like, yeah. And so we hatched a plan called Operation Tim. So Deirdre, one of the women in book club, says, I will email Tim. I know he travels all the time, but I know he's just broken up with somebody, so I know he's available. At 9 a.m, my phone is ringing. It's Deirdre. I said, hello? She goes, you won't believe this. And I said, what? And she said, I got to work this morning, and there was an email from Tim Lewis, and it said, hey, Deards, long time no talk. Love to see you whenever we can. And if your friend Alisyn Camerota is ever in Chicago, let me know. I'd love to take her out to dinner. She writes back to him, how about March 10th? He writes back, sure, that sounds great. She goes, it's already done. You already have a date with Tim Lewis.
That's hilarious.
It was amazing. He was on our wavelength at that point. Just at the same time that I was wondering about him, he was wondering about me. And so I went out. So the girls didn't go. They dumped me, because now I already have a date with Tim Lewis. And I went out, and it was the best date ever. It was the best first date ever. He was my friends had buried the lead, first of all, that he was super handsome. These friends are so salt of the earth, wonderful people, that they didn't mention that part. It didn't cross their mind as a selling point, And so I saw him. He looks like Warren Beatty, and I was like, hello, Tim Lewis. I was so.
You'd never seen a picture?
No,
Nothing.
They didn't show me a picture. No, wow. I'd never in 5 years seen a picture of Tim Lewis. I don't even think they had one. And they, but I was so convinced that it wouldn't work, that I wouldn't like him, that I, on the first date, wore my interview outfit that I had worn for the interview, which was a blue suit, business suit, red turtleneck under the blue suit. There was not an ounce of flesh showing from my chin to my toes. That's what I wore on our first date. I see Tim Lewis, who they have not mentioned looks like Warren Beatty. I was like, oh, for the love of God. I was like, oh my God. Can I go into the bathroom and take off this turtleneck somehow? What am I doing? But Tim it didn't faze him, I guess. He didn't seem bothered that I was in basically, a nun's habit that I was wearing. And we had a fantastic date. like just talking, joking, laughing, playing pool. I beat him somehow in 2 pool games, and we just had, it was really, from that moment on, we always had a plan to see each other again, and that was a wonderful experience in my life to have that kind of courtship.
All in.
Yeah,
And you could feel right off the bat his solidity,
totally.
his good heart,
Yes.
his ethics.
Yeah, all of it. And it just felt very, people had always told me, when it's right, it will feel easy. I was like, not for me, I don't think it's ever going to be easy. That's not how I do these things, and it was easy. I do believe that there is that unseen hand that puts us in each other's path in that way. It was a wonderful experience to be a part of that. And for it never, we were older. I mean, we met at 33. And so we didn't break up and get back together. It all happened really quickly after that first date. We got engaged 9 months later. We got married 9 months after that. And, at some point had 3 kids under 2 years old. And, but I mean, again, we were older, and I wouldn't change anything. And I just wouldn't change anything. Tim packed a lot into those 58 years, and I know that he felt satisfied. I don't think that he thought that he had done everything that he wanted to in life, but I know that he was very satisfied with all that we'd built and achieved.
And you were both all-in parents, amazing parents.
Thanks.
You want to share a little bit about that? How you
Tim,
two parented?
I think Tim was a little too all in. I mean, I'm annoyed by this helicopter parenting era that we're living in. I'd like to cut all of our kids a little bit more leash, you know. I, being an 80s free-range kid myself, had to figure a lot of stuff out on my own, possibly too much self-reliance. I maybe shouldn't have been outside some seedy bar on the Lower East Side, when I was 15 years old with no money. But, you find your way home. Mm-hmm. And so I would argue with him all the time that, I wanted our kids to have more independence and more freedom. And, Tim felt like all in good time, all in good time. And it's true that now in college, that's what they're doing. I had that experience in high school.
Right. And
some middle school. And they had to wait until college. So it's working out okay.
The kids were very close with Tim.
Yes. They were very close with Tim. And Tim was a Tim was a very active father. He was an incredibly active father, particularly around their extracurricular stuff and their sports. So the kids benefited from having Tim's influence in their sports life.
When Tim found out that he had cancer, how did you present that to the kids, and how did you walk with the kids as parents through those 2 years and then his crossing over?
So it was very baffling because Tim didn't have a single symptom. And so to find out that you have stage 4 untreatable, well, not untreatable, incurable, deadly cancer when you just played your best tennis game ever is very strange. Yeah. It's a strange experience. So Tim, as I said, was incredibly fit, incredibly healthy. He didn't smoke. He wasn't a big drinker. He ate well. So, he constantly was working out. Not constantly. He worked out daily in a rigorous way. So, it was, I'm left with kind of the mystery of it all. And why this happened. There's no answers. I don't come here with any particular answer. I don't know if I'll ever have an answer for this. But it was, really mind-blowing to learn that he had this stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And pancreatic cancer, famously doesn't have a lot of symptoms, and that's why it's more times than not caught very late, and why it is so incurable. So most people discover it at stage 4.
Oh, wow.
Because there's often no signs, and there's not a regular test that people do for it. So
how did you guys find out that he had it?
So Tim had one night had excruciating pain, abdominal pain, and the next morning, and Tim is not a complainer, and so he woke up and he was like, I had a horrible night. I have horrible abdominal pain. And my brother happens to be an abdominal surgeon, and we called him, and Tim described it, and he said, I think you have a kidney stone. And I think you should go to the hospital because it sounds like you have a bad kidney stone. So Tim went to the hospital. Tim would never have gone to the hospital had he not been in pain because he just would have soldiered through it. But he went, and they found that they did an ultrasound and found the kidney stone, and then said to him, and we have some other news for you. You also have stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Oh my God.
And so Tim was at the hospital by himself and learned that, he wouldn't be living much longer by himself that day. And so, it also happened to be our wedding anniversary.
That very day?
That day. So we were going out to dinner with the kids to a big steak dinner. And so
goodness.
Tim was at the hospital much longer. I kept saying, Tim, what's up? And he was like, just need a little bit longer. I'll be home soon. Just need a little bit more time, like not saying anything. And we were there. He said, I'll meet you at the restaurant. And we went to the restaurant, and Tim walked in and faked it all night for us and had a great anniversary dinner, and then the next morning told me. We took about 2 or 3 weeks, to line up everything of figuring out treatment, figuring out the actual diagnosis, figuring out therapists for each of the kids before he told them. And he did not tell them, nor did I, what exactly stage 4 pancreatic cancer means. I mean, he said it's very serious, but he didn't,
Didn't put a timeline on it or, yeah.
And they were all in high school at this point.
Yes, they were all in high school.
You said we all have to sit down at the table? How did
Yeah,
you?
yeah. So we immediately found a grief counselor, Tim and I, for ourselves, and she said, I strongly urge you to tell the kids sooner than later because I can assure you they are intuiting something. They are intuiting something, that something's not right. The therapist gave us instructions on how, to do it during the daytime, don't do it at nighttime, don't do it after dinner, do it like after breakfast. Things are easier to hear during the daylight hours. We spent the next, 22 months, Tim and I just battling the hell out of it. Every day our goal, Tim's goal was to live our regular lives because that's where he found his bliss, in our regular lives at the kitchen dinner table, doing a puzzle with the kids or playing Yahtzee with the kids, dinner every night. Like that was his bliss. He didn't feel the need to drop everything and go to Italy and, go on a round the world trip or start taking off our bucket list or anything like that.
His bucket list was the family dinner table.
Yeah, that was
great.
it. That was the ultimate life experience for him.
You were living his first choice life.
Yes, that's right. That's right. If you ever get, a deadly cancer, you want to be married to Alisyn Camerota because being a reporter my whole life, I could network the shit out of this. I could figure out where all the, clinical trials were. I was cross-referencing with every, oncologist at every leading institution and getting them to call me back. I'm built for this in a way that people who are not resourceful reporters probably aren't, and I feel for those people because it requires a level of coordination and quarterbacking that I don't think regular people can do.
Yeah.
And it is hard as hell. And even Tim, who was so bright and so organized, would be like, what's the name of that drug I'm supposed to be on? And do you remember how many times a day I'm supposed to take this? But does this contradict with the other one? And I would be like, I have it, I knew it all. You have to take that one at 5 p.m., but you have to take it with food. And then but you can't take it after these, whatever, Aproxin, because that one is contradicted with the first one. I was the massive quarterback for the whole thing. And I was honored, I was honored to be able to do that. Tim isn't somebody who ever asks for help, who had never asked for help before. And we were, a great team for those 2 years.
And you got him the best of the best, the most cutting edge, if anything could have done it.
Oh, yeah. Tim was one of 7 people on Earth who had gotten this new targeted therapy. That he was a guinea pig, and he was very strong, so it ended up like it will pay dividends down the road because Tim was able to tolerate things that other people might not have been able to. So these clinical trials, he was, written about in various studies because he responded so well to these different clinical trials.
And also just the solace of knowing that you're doing everything you can. Like there's a comfort in that, is like we're trying our best, we're doing everything we can, we're reaching out to every person that we can.
Yes, I mean, I will say that I'm in a grief group, and all of us are cursed with, and I think this is just part of the normal process of like, what if we had on that day done that one more thing?
That's built into grief, is the nature of grief.
Yeah.
Was there in these 2 years way of being with this, a spiritual dimension to all this for you or Tim or the kids?
I was seen as the more spiritual person in our relationship, and I am a big prayer, and I would pray every day throughout this. I mean, I prayed regularly anyway before that, but every day. I mean, I was a very active prayer, like down on my knees, hands to the air. But I would pray in a way of gratitude. Every time that was answered. And it was mind-blowing. I'd be like, I know Tim seems weaker, but thank you for letting the cancer shrink. Thank you for letting the medication really work. And I would be saying that on a complete flyer of faith. Like, in other words, there was no evidence that what I was asking for had happened. And I realized that is what faith, during this process, I realized that is what faith is, which is no concrete evidence.
Yeah.
And I'm going to believe anyway. I'm choosing to believe anyway, even though the evidence actually looks contrary to what I am choosing to believe. And I'm going to believe. And then we'd get a scan, and it would come back like the doctor was like, I can't believe this. The cancer is completely being controlled. Like these tumors have shrunk. And I would be like, wow. I'm very happy with how my prayers were answered, because we never because it's funny, with pancreatic cancer, it's a whole different experience, which is we never prayed ever, please cure this. We knew there was no cure. But we knew that his life was going to be cut short. And in some ways, I mean, in some ways that's easier, maybe. I don't know if it's easier, but it's a very different experience because other people with cancer, they pray that they'll be cured and that they'll live. And then sometimes they're disappointed. All I did was pray for like this moment to be a little bit better, or for this week to have good news of some kind. But I didn't pray for those other things. And so we weren't always up against that kind of battle of hope.
Did your kids see you pray?
No.
Did they know that you prayed?
Yes. I have always been honest with my kids about that I'm a prayer, and that I believe in the afterlife, and that I believe that I have guardian angels, and that they are, I believed, but I'm open to suggestion on this one now, I believe that it's my own relatives who are my guardian angels. I believe my grandmother, my grandfather, my father.
That's beautiful.
That people who have passed. And I just get that impression, and I feel their presence. And so that's what I believe. I have since heard from some people that there are other guardian angels that they don't personally know, and that they might be these kind of archetypal guardians. A friend of mine told me that she had this kind of startling waking dream once where she saw a knight as a child, and she saw a knight standing at her bedside, and she was sure that she was awake. She saw her brother, who had recently passed, and the knight. So I don't know what that is, but I am open to there being other guardian angels, but I have always prayed to the people who I know who are in the afterlife. And I've told that to my kids.
Is Tim a guardian angel now for you too?
Yes. So I'm sure that Tim is guiding the kids. So good things, very good things have happened to all of my kids since Tim has passed.
Is Tim present in other ways too?
If I had my phone right now, I wouldn't have touched my phone and Tim's picture would pop up. Doing often exactly what we are talking about. I was recently at a nice lunch in the mountains with a friend, and I said, oh my gosh, Tim would so love this place. It was kind of remote and snowy. I said, Tim would love this meal. He would love this place. Not touching my phone. My phone pops up, and it's Tim at a restaurant, smiling, looking at us. So he's at the restaurant.
He's like, I love this place.
Yeah, I am loving this place,
Yes.
Alisyn, you know? And so things like this happen all the time.
Can you feel him?
2 nights ago, I was in bed, and at about 1 a.m, there were 4 knocks on my bedroom door, like, and I said, and it woke me up, and I said, yes, because I thought that Nate had a bad dream, or that Nate needed something. I said, yes. Do you need me? And the door opened, and there was no one there, and I said, okay, and I prepared, by now I was awake and I was startled, and I said in my head, not out loud, okay, I'm present. I know that I had been asking to, feel your presence more, and I'm available. I'm all ears. And so I sat there and I said, I'm just going to try to feel this. I'm going to try not to think, not to do too much in my head. I'm just going to feel what's happening right now. And if you're like, I don't know if, I couldn't tell if I was going to feel like an indent on the bed or what was going to happen next. And I said, you have my attention. And at that moment, the spotlight on the side of the house turned on where we don't have a curtain and shone a light beam into the bedroom at that exact moment, and it kind of illuminated the bedroom. And I said, okay, I see what's happening. I'm available. I'm open. I'm here for it. And I tried to get quiet and tried to feel what was happening and feel the presence in the room. And then Tim's phone made 2 back-to-back noises that I've never heard it make before, ever. I have been honored to be a support for 2 or more close friends whose spouses are going through cancer. And I've just tried to be there for them and tried to, give them the support that I would want to get. And I woke up and there was a text from one of my new friends whose wife was going through cancer, and he said, I just want you to know that my wife passed away last night. And this is he said, and the circumstances surrounding it, he said, were so extraordinary that I'm not sure I will ever, that I haven't fully processed all of the kind of metaphysical things that happened around it, but I look forward to sharing it with you. And I didn't text back, I think I might have had a moment with her last night. I didn't let him, he said, I look forward to sharing it to you when I can, come up for air. And I said, great, I'm all here, I'm here for it. But something happened that night in my room.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Tim was showing her, if Tim was welcoming her. I don't know if she was saying thank you for helping her husband. I don't know what the hell all that was, but something
happened.
Was happening.
Yeah.
And it was just notable.
Does it feel like Tim was helping her along?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to interpret it. So in other words, when I got that message that next morning, I thought, oh, okay, that fits. That tracks with whatever just happened. So, I mean, that's one possibility, because I do believe those things, So
Have you had a mystical experience?
I consider those things that like the phone and the
Yes.
knocking on the door and the door opening and the light. I do consider those
Yes.
mystical experiences.
Between 2 worlds.
Yeah. But I have a lot. I mean, I don't have a lot of those, but I have enough. In other words, it was also a very windy night. Okay, so you could say that was all the wind. I guess. Sure. I chalk those things up to mystical experiences that other people might just call the wind.
Well, since Tim's crossing over, Do you feel that you are living more between two worlds?
Yes, definitely. I feel much more between two worlds now. And I did this, since his diagnosis, it's funny, this is probably a large part of grief, but I'm not as tethered to this world anymore. I don't feel as invested in this current Earth school that we're all in. I'm feeling, I think more about, I think more than I used to about my relatives who've passed away, my friends. I have a lot of friends at this point by our late 50s. I have a lot of friends who've passed away. One of my best friends died 6 months before Tim. I talk to her a lot. I think about her a lot. My own family members. So I'm very linked to the afterlife in a way that feels more meaningful to me right now than in some ways my daily life. And, I don't know if that's healthy or not, but that's just where I am right now.
May I share with you, you've always had beautiful eyes. You have mystical eyes.
What does that mean?
Well, I see a soul bursting through those eyes.
Thanks. Yeah.
A beautiful soul.
Thank you.
And a powerful soul.
Thank you.
And a bright soul.
I definitely feel like there's so much more than just what we're doing here on Earth and living on Earth.
Yeah.
And I do think that there's an active afterlife. And I try, when I say I don't know if it's healthy, it's that I don't want to be so invested in the afterlife that I'm deadened to something that's happening here. I know that each day is a gift, and I know that it is a gift to be alive and to be on Earth. So I don't want to downplay that, but my loyalties right now are with the afterlife.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything unhealthy about that. Is you're just recognizing the fact that this reality, what we call reality, isn't all there is to the story. And the fact that you're connecting with other parts of the story, I think, is healthy. It's not unhealthy.
Thanks.
Feeling these things, feeling connected to Tim, feeling connected to your ancestors, feeling connected to something bigger than just you, I think that's all healthy, wouldn't you say?
Well, and I'm also thinking about you as a mom. How are you bringing your kids on this journey, it seems?
Again, I pray, I think, more than, well, let me think about
Do you
this.
pray out loud?
I pray, if I'm alone, I'm happy to pray out loud. Like when I was praying for Tim's, for the different clinical trials to have, some efficacy and help him feel better, and then they would. I would sometimes pray out loud, but mostly I see it as a private experience.
How did your kids learn to pray?
I don't know if they pray. They just know I pray. And I recommend to them that they pray. But
So
we
you
don't
encourage them to find their own path to pray.
Yes, and to find their own spiritual path. And obviously Tim's death has they're all in with the phone communication. They're all in. We'll be telling something and Tim's phone will chime in and they all stop and look at each other and go thanks, Dad. So they're all in on that level of communication. But I don't know what their personal prayer routine or practice is. And they have to find it themselves. They know I believe in the afterlife, and one of my daughters has admitted that she struggles with whether she believes it, how much she believes it. So she's in the process of trying to figure that out for herself. One of my daughters has talked about how she feels Tim in everything, like in the wind, in the trees, in the leaves falling, in the way the sunlight is. She walks to class and she just sees Tim in nature and feels Tim's presence in nature. So that's new. She feels like him. In some ways, death allows you to be with the person more. You can access the person more. They're always with you, and so she is having that experience. And my son, when I tell him, pray for this, or I think Dad's guiding you, he nods. He nods not like, Mom, you're crazy. He nods like he accepts that, but I don't know what his personal practice is.
But by being open, by being transparent, they know that the spiritual reality is right here. Tim is right here.
Yeah.
And there's a way in. There's a way to Tim. There's a way to God. And that we can talk about this here.
Oh, definitely. I try to make it a comfortable topic for them to be able to talk about, and that I don't have any, I'm not abashed, about talking about my belief system in that way.
I think when a parent opens
Yeah.
our spiritual heart and speaks the spiritual truth, our kids feel authorized the rest of their life to see into the spiritual reality, to speak with freedom and confidence. It's the greatest gift you give. So your openness, Alisyn, your generous transparency lets them know there is a road to their Father, that they are under the sunlight of God. They're never alone.
Death is the universal experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's our one universal experience, and yet we don't bond about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's taboo. We don't talk about it. People are really afraid to talk about it. And now that it's such a kind of constant companion of mine, it has freed me. I mean, death is as a gift. It has freed me from having anxiety about it,
Totally. Yeah.
being afraid of it. I don't see it as like the Grim Reaper anymore. I see it as our kind of universal constant.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful that my kids have been exposed to that.
You guys learned the lesson of death before you experienced death. You lived life to its fullest extent together, fell madly in love, built a family, had adventures and Yahtzee games, and all the little things. It's not about the big things. It's not about the trips to Italy or things like that. It's about those little things, right? And then to be confronted with death, to reinforce that in a way, and to kind of like have that teaching conveyed throughout the entire family, so that your kids now have examples of like, well, I should live my life like dad, like mom, and this is what death is. This is what spirituality is. Ultimately, that's what spirituality is. It's living your life to its fullest extent and being aware of the fact that there's something bigger than that.
I am somebody who was always looking for peak experiences. I've had a lot of peak experiences in my life. And so, Tim didn't need that. Tim's peak experience was the Yahtzee game. Tim's peak experience was, doing homework with Nate at night. And I was always like, boring,
Right,
and I would say to him like, but we need to go someplace and we need to, go like, I just was always looking for something that would ignite the kind of dopamine, hit of some sort of peak experience and I do still stick by that. Sometimes changing up your landscape and travel and going to hear live music and all of that stuff.
It's all great.
Are peak experiences in a way that sitting at your kitchen table can't always achieve. However, Tim did open my eyes to. I am now much more so happy being at home, just being with my kids, just being in bed reading. All of those things that feel more alive, are able to feel more alive to me now, which used to feel more humdrum.
Gift from Tim.
Yeah, that's from Tim for sure.
You need the dopamine, but you need the oxytocin too, right?
Yeah.
And hearing your guys' story together, it's like you guys are this wonderful yin yang, that complement each other with these opposite and different perspectives that come together, and that difference is beautiful because it creates this like greater whole, right?
For sure.
So,
And Tim would
cool.
always laugh about that. He'd be like, I know, this is all boring to you, And like the thing about the sports games and everything is just so funny that now he's stuck me with this. and the thing that I didn't want to do, and now, it's just not lost on me or Tim. I'm sure that he's
getting a chuckle out of
enjoying
it.
this, yes. Enjoying this.
So what would you say were his enduring gifts to you?
Well, that Tim was so steady, as you, I think, have pointed out. He personified steadiness. And I really longed for that steadiness. You know, that's what I was searching for throughout my my adolescence and my teenage years and my 20s. And so it's particularly wonderful to have a steady foundation so you can go off and have these peak experiences. You know, that is a wonderful combination. Like, without the steadiness, those can feel kind of chaotic and haphazard. But Tim was such an incredible steady presence in my life and gave me so much stability and such a great, strong foundation that I have been very heartened to know that, like, that has endured. Like, it's more than just Tim. Like, I wasn't built like that. And so I thought that when Tim died, that my foundation, you know, would crumble and the steadiness of my life would crumble. But, you know, he, like, set it up in such a way and was such a practitioner of that I have been able to continue on with that foundation and that steadiness. And I still
And your
have it.
kids now have both
Yeah.
steadiness and peak experiences.
Yes. I mean, and I think that in order to have, I think that that's really the best combination, because I didn't have a steady foundation in my teenage years. And so that, you know, causes a lot of anxiety. And when it turns out, and I learned this via Tim, that when you have a strong foundation and steadiness, you can endure a lot.
Mm.
You know, I mean, I think that because he set us up in this way, none of us really fell apart. The day that Tim died, they happened, sort of, if you believe in coincidence, to be coming home from these summer trips that they had in Europe. Mm. And Tim really wanted them to go to Europe, even though he was getting weaker. And they went, and then things took a turn for the worse on the days that the weekend that they were coming back. Mm-hmm. And so I said to Tim, I'm going to go get the girls now at the airport. If you can hang on, that would be great. He was at this point unconscious. And I said, it would be great. If you can't, I understand. But I'll be back, God willing, without traffic, in 3 hours. And so I went to get them at JFK, and their planes miraculously landed exactly on time, and we miraculously didn't hit a lot of traffic on the way back. And in the car, I just said, guys, this is going to be the hardest day of our lives, and we need to lock arms and just go do this. And so we just, like, locked arms and marched into the hospital together. And, you know, one of my daughters said...
Literally locked arms.
Yeah. Yes, we walked in, like, strength in numbers. I just let them know. I mean, I didn't even have to really let them know, just that we were all in it. It was obvious to them that we were all in it together. It was obvious to them because we were physically in it together, and we were emotionally in it together, and we just accepted that.
Were they able to tell him goodbye?
Mm-hmm.
They did.
Yeah, oh yeah. So
That's beautiful.
Tim waited for them
That day. He waited.
He waited for them.
That's beautiful.
I mean,
He hung on.
He hung on. He hung on. He waited for them, and they got to say their piece with him. They got personal time with him. They got to hang out with him as all the kids together, and then individually. And we were all together. They got to hold his hand. They got to do all sorts of, you know, whatever they wanted to do. So I have tried to project strength, and I mostly feel strong. It's not like I'm faking it. I mostly feel strong, and I mostly do see myself as a pillar of strength in their life. So I'm not just acting, but at times that I've felt my most vulnerable, I try not to involve them, usually.
I hear that question as a beautiful quest. Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
I don't hear it as weak.
Thanks. And I was so impressed with Nate that he said, well, did you ever ask Dad that? Or did you and Dad ever talk about that? Like, that's a great, smart, wise question. Mm-hmm. Like, in other words, well, what is the answer, Mom?
He felt invited into the quest.
Yeah. And also, like, that's a good question that you're posing. Did you ever think to ask Dad? You know, like, that was very practical of him. He wasn't like, I don't know. Or he wasn't like, we're screwed. We're doomed. Yeah, he just said, well, maybe you two adults might have discussed this. What did you guys come up with?
I know
Almost game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it was like an unintended moment of vulnerability that you shared with him, but I wonder if it was like really beneficial for him to be invited into the conversation that way and to be able to connect with you in a different way because he saw that vulnerability and was able to meet you there, you know?
I try not to shield him from
Yeah.
all of those moments. I think it is good for the kids to see parents as vulnerable, for sure. But I don't want them to have to think they have to take care of me.
So now you're helping others along.
Yeah, and I'm honored to do that. I mean, people know a lot. I mean, a handful of people, particularly people who have been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, reach out to me, and I am more than happy to share the wisdom that I have gathered and what I know scientifically now about some of this. And for other people who are going through this with their spouses in particular, I'm just happy to be a presence for them through this, ordeal. And of course, be careful of what you wish for, because my kids have become incredibly resilient throughout all of this pain. This isn't what I was hoping for in terms of building resilience for the kids. But I do think that because Tim, as I said, was such a loving and steady presence, I didn't understand until Tim's diagnosis, that kind of loving steadiness can also help you build resilience. Yeah. I didn't know that. I thought that it was only built through hardship. And I didn't know that it was built through like a consistency and a constancy and somebody being able to be there, which gives you then as a kid the confidence to spread your own wings and to leave the nest and to be strong. So I didn't know that. I thought it was only built through pain and hardship. And so Tim didn't believe that. And so miraculously, my kids have become resilient throughout all of this.
A friend of mine calls those God winks, and I think it's a great term.
I do too.
Yeah.
I've always loved God winks.
Yeah.
Yes, I know that term.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So what would be your parting word for parents?
At the risk of being super corny, it really is just about love, and it really is just about connection. And, I know it's hard to have faith when things are hard, but it pays off, I think. I think faith is kind of miraculous. And, I just don't sweat the small stuff. And it's good to practice gratitude. It really, really does help. It does help. If you frame whatever's happening in your life through the frame of gratitude, and if you can start your day by writing the 3 things that you're grateful for, it does change your life.
Totally. Yeah.
I have a lot of friends, I didn't ask, this is unsolicited, who have been hearing from Tim.
Yes. Yes.
So Tim has been making the rounds, and he's been busy. So I have at least 5, maybe at this point 6, friends who have had dreams in which Tim figures prominently that don't feel like dreams to them. They feel like something more technicolor. They feel like visitations. By all accounts, Tim is having a fantastic time. He's smiling.
That's wonderful.
In every one of these dreams. The sun is shining on him. He's laughing. He is telling people, now the great thing is that I can be everywhere. He's told people, I can be everywhere now. I can go anywhere, and I can be everywhere and help other people. I've never doubted that the afterlife is a place of light and sunshine and joy. Like, I believe that to be true. And so I'm glad that Tim is enjoying it, because Tim did not have a vision of the afterlife. Yeah. I'm so honored to be with you guys, and thank you for reaching out, and thank you for the willingness and enthusiasm to talk about all of this. And I'm just really happy that we can all talk about this so openly, like we were saying, and that you guys have dedicated your time and energy and this wonderful podcast to talking about these issues.
We honor you, Tim, and we honor you, Alisyn.
Thank you. Thank you.